Albert wanted me to talk about iterating to product market fit. If you watch the video, you'll know that I think it's one of the most important things. And the kind of key about it is constant iteration, and it's not just iterating on the product component, but across the business, the strategy, every single thing about it. But yeah, a little bit more about myself, which probably hasn't changed too much since the video either. But I guess you'd call me a serial entrepreneur. I call myself just more of a constantly somebody who's constantly iterating on himself. So I always have to be doing projects. For the past year or so, my projects have been less tech and startup and business focused because I bought a place up in kind of northern-ish Canada, and I have a forest and all these things, and I've been building trails, but I always have to be doing different projects. So through that, yeah, I founded about five. I usually say 5.5, but people always then question me on the half successful startups. And it's because one of them was just a very small project that I did end up selling, but it was kind of a very small amount. So it's probably the more notable startups. The very first one that I kind of stumbled into was a company called StageBloc, which became very successful and important in the music industry. You probably would never have heard of it, but we basically powered everything for all major US market, but also global artists. Everything from their website to their fan club to their email marketing to their in-person merch sales. And that startup was kind of the epitome of iteration to find success. Stumbled into Bitcoin in late 2010. The story there is that StageBloc, the company I was heavily focused on at the time, was all about centralizing everything. So everything Metallica did was all heavily centralized to a single database so that we could find very interesting insights across those different data sets and then use those insights to automate marketing, to drive more sales, to increase conversions, to gather more data and create a flywheel. Um, so I got really fascinated by the concept of decentralization, which was the complete antithesis to everything that I had been focused on. So I just started really diving in, playing around with it. Even though I don't consider myself today an engineer, I have done a fair amount of engineering in the past. So I was playing with Bitcoin, was one of the early people, a part of a project called Color Coins, did a bunch of other things. And then as new other cryptocurrencies, blockchains came out, the terminology has changed over the years. So I don't always remember exactly which ones to refer to them as, but I was very early pre-launch into Ethereum, pre-launch into a bunch of other different projects. So yeah, that's me. Done a bunch of different things. Currently, I'm heavily focused on one project called Project Admission. We're trying to effectively transform ticketing, and through that, then kind of remake and modernize the live event space, heavily focused on music. But currently, most of our success and inroads have been through sports, which is kind of our initial go-to-market strategy. I'm also with a friend building a CPG or like a physical product company. And then I do investing through Megatron Ventures, which is kind of my internal investment arm. But I also think that is much more of a product studio because I typically like to get my hands really dirty and stuff. And then, yeah, like I said, most of my actual projects that I'm really digging into as new things are different. They're building trails in my backyard. Okay, so again, you've already seen this, so I'm going to go fast. But in my opinion, product market fit, getting to product market fit is the most important thing. Like you have to do it because if you don't do it, you're going to either totally fail or you're going to think that you aren't failing until you surprise yourself by failing. Um, I think this is a quote from Paul Graham. So Paul Graham is one of the original founders of Y Combinator, which is one of the like most well-known US-based incubators. I would definitely suggest looking into and reading much more about Paul Graham. Even if you disagree sometimes with some of the things he says, they're at least very thought-provoking. But this is kind of how, I believe it's his quote, I believe this is how he describes reaching product market fit. And usually I just think of it as something that you know it when you've hit it. And you've hit it when you're running as fast as you can and the business keeps growing. Um, yes, one of the key things that I found on this page is kind of this middle part, which is as a small company, one of the most like big things that we can do compared to the incumbents in a space is move fast. And by moving fast, you can kind of iterate as quickly as possible. Um, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's some more Paul Graham. Um, this is kind of the opposite approach. Yeah, we'll just move fast. Um, Okay, this is another key for in my opinion on this slide is that almost all failure. So there's basically two reasons why startups fail. The number one reason is you run out of money, and usually you run out of money because you didn't reach product market fit. And not reaching product market fit is one of the, yeah, I mean, it is key. And the way to reach it is to just keep iterating, talking to your customers, finding out what problems they have, constant iteration, both across the product, both across the business model, the strategy, every single thing that you can do. You have to do whatever it takes. I think this paragraph is actually very important for kind of approaching it where you will do and you should do whatever it takes to reach product market fit. It's the most important thing, even if it means swapping yourself out. You'll still retain equity, but it's just getting to product market fit or BPMF or APMF, as Paul Graham says, kind of a weird thing. So yeah. This is also super important. So some of the general advice that I've always found, and other of my friends who built startups always find, is that it can be very tempting to try scaling.